Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And we are really going to do it again tonight. We are so excited for our guests. But before we get started, as always, I just want to thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for the lively chat that goes on in the chat conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. Thank you for we are really going to do it again tonight. We are so excited for our guests. But before we get started, as we are streaming over there, welcome, everybody. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for the lively chat that goes on in the chat conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. Thank you for we are really going to do it again tonight. We are so excited for our guests. But before we get started, as we are over there, everybody, thank you for your energy. For the lively chat that goes on in the chat conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. Thank you for we are really going to do it again tonight. We are so excited for our we manifest for beautiful, loving, and benevolent reasons for the world, for the new world, for peace, for personal reasons, for health. And we've had some pretty incredible results from what we do. If you'd like to join us, send an email to the mastermind connection at gmail.com. Augie will send you the link. You can come in, see if you like us, and see if you like what we're doing, and maybe you'll become part of the amazing group of people that are there. So without any further ado, Augie, please tell us about our very phenomenal guest.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And yeah, this is going to be fun because we have Michael Schratt with us. He is a military aerospace historian, and he is a digger. He finds stuff that hardly anybody else can get their hands on, and people come to him with stuff too. So we're going to hear some about that. He's also the author of the book Dark Files. And that book has 61 fully illustrated UFO encounters from around the world. And pictures, folks. It's got pictures on just about every page. You can see what it looked like with the crashes and the crafts and the drawings and the illustrations. I love books with pictures because this is something that you really got to go have a look at. And he is getting this information from the people that have boots on the ground where it actually happened a lot of times. And those are some of the people that even come to him would say, "Hey, I was there, I know." So that you can't get any closer than that. And he is also a speaker, a lecturer, and a guest on shows and conferences just about everywhere. He spent most of his time now researching and has developed contacts in the deep, dark waters of governmental top secret and black programs and some, because there's a different world out there in those arenas, one that we have never been told about and probably never will. But there is some really interesting stuff, and we're going to hear about that. And of course, being a pilot, I've got to say this too. Michael is a pilot also, and he also spoke at the largest air show in the world at OSHKOSH, Wisconsin, a few years back. And I've been to those the so-called fly-ins and the air shows, and it's phenomenal. So that was at least a fun note, and we want to hear the rest of the story. Michael, welcome to the show.
Wow, great to be with
Welcome,
you.
Michael.
Great to be with you.
So good. So exciting to have you here. And I am just so curious, Michael, how did this come about for you? I mean, some people tell us, there were little road signs along the way when they were little kids, and it didn't really follow the normal trajectory, normal in air quotes. How did this happen for you? It's so fascinating.
I've had an interest in aviation my entire life from a very early age. My dad used to take me to these old air museums where they had these World War II aircraft parked outside and they were sitting there for decades and the paint was chipped and the windows were oxidized and they were cracked and a lot of the flight controls had a skeleton appearance to it, and it just had this ghostly appeal when you see like a B-25 just sitting out in the weeds, that really sparked my interest in aviation. And then, as you mentioned, going to OSHKOSH Air Show, and then I started tracking the more obscure aircraft, the aircraft that we don't hear too much about, some of the things that were procured within the black world. And then things just led one to another into this whole concept of the UFO crash retrievals. And I knew that it would be the crash retrievals that could help to end the quote unquote cosmic Watergate. And hopefully tonight we'll be able to consider some of these more important retrieval operations.
Yes. Yeah, gosh, there's so
Wow.
much to talk about there. I don't know, where would you prefer to start?
Well, we can start the presentation whenever you're ready. So,
Yeah, that would
All
be all
right.
right. Yeah, let's do it.
should we do it? All
Let's
right. So
do
let's
it.
go
Yeah.
ahead and do this.
You
All
want to share
right. Let's
screen?
share screen. Yep. We'll go here.
Mhm.
I think we want to go here. Share. Okay. I think we got that.
There we go.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And we want to say slideshow from beginning here. Let's see, home, slideshow from beginning. Okay, so do you see this full screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
You see that full screen? Okay, so this is kind of like the first slide in this whole presentation here. And the overall umbrella term of this PowerPoint presentation is retrievals of the third kind, cosmic crashes, corpses, and cover-ups. And I kind of want to begin here. UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. Now, why is it called the ultimate holy grail of UFO research? It's simple, actually, because when you talk about crash retrievals, the crash retrievals have the body, the debris, and the craft. And that is the physical evidence that we're going to need, the armor, the tools, the actual physical evidence that we're going to need to move this entire field forward. Because, we've all been doing this for decades now. If you take it all the way back to 1947, we can go further back than that. I mean, this whole cosmic Watergate has been going on for decades. We're absolutely pushing 80 years now. And if we don't make a management decision, if we don't take the bull by the horns and get radical with this whole concept of crash retrievals, UFO research, we're going to be here another 80 years and we're still not going to know the truth. That's why the crash retrievals are the holy grail to this whole concept. We've got to get this pinned down. And this is the final curtain call on UFO disclosure, because if we don't run these to ground, if we don't find the remaining legacy witnesses, the first-hand military witnesses to these cases, we are going to be lost to history. And so that's why it's important that we track these people down here. Now, before we begin, I want to hit some of these bullet items here, some of these announcements. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact per the description of the original source. That's number one. Number two, the identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his witnesses and contacts. The visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches, which originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. So where did I get this information? Where did Leonard get this information? This is the source material here. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists, and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So in other words, we're talking about the best of the best, first-hand military sources who held the bodies, who were at the autopsies, who loaded these craft on 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks, shipped them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We're talking about the first-hand military witnesses here. A couple of quotes. Number one, UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about them in the local newspaper. So that's the first one. That's the general public. Number two, there are not now, nor ever have been, any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is from their own press release. So it's going to be the witnesses against the United States government throughout this entire presentation. And we're going to see who wins this battle at the end here. Okay, I want to highlight this man right here. This is the man of the hour. This is Leonard Stringfield. He was the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrieval. So he gets credit for coining this term here. And over a period of 30 years, he developed dozens of firsthand military witnesses, kind of what we talked about in the previous slide here. And we'll do just a quick biography. He was born in 1920. He grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated high school in 1939, he already memorized the entire dictionary. So this is the kind of gentleman you want on your team here. He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio. He retired after 30 years. He wrote two books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0, that was in 1957. Later, he wrote a book called Situation Red, the UFO Siege, back in 1977. The next bullet item is what's important to our discussion here tonight. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation for a number of reasons. Number one, this was kind of a virgin territory back then. People really didn't know about crash retrievals. It was a new concept. And when he gave his lecture at the MUFON Symposium, it was under the concept that he would preserve an important part of our national history by getting all these stories out. But he had an agreement with the witnesses that their names had to be protected. So there was no way for the attendance of the symposium to independently verify sources. So there was some friction there. There was some pushback, but nevertheless, it was a watershed moment in ufology here. He passed away December 18th, 1994. So a couple newspaper clippings here. Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. Quote, what I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. Yeah, it is. If even one of these cases is true, it is the biggest thing since Christ. Now, Leonard maintained a collection of 22 bank boxes of original correspondence, letters, drawings, audio tapes, testimony from his sources. These witnesses should be located and their testimony should be presented before Congress. I want to make that point too. So, just before we begin here, I want to highlight this book. I've got a copy of it here. Everything we'll be talking about tonight is referenced in this book called UFO Crash Retrievals, The Complete Investigations by Leonard Stringfield, 1978 to 1994. So as we go through these cases, and I show you the bodies, the craft, the debris, where they were brought, how they were taken there, it's all referenced in this book. So if you want the intricate inside details of all these cases, I would request that anyone get a copy of this book. It's available on Amazon. It's not cheap, and it's not for the faint of heart because you look through this book, you'll notice immediately that it's detailed, it's wordy. There's a lot of detail here. It's devoid of drawings, illustrations, and sketches. So you're left to your own imagination to kind of come up with what these crash retrievals look like. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's always kind of good to use your illustration. But what I thought is someone needs to go through this book, with a fine-tooth comb, page by page, pick out the mission critical cases, and then commission high quality, refined sketches to be made to make these things come alive and preserve an important part of our national history. And then once that's done, those sketches will be used as a basis for a full color illustration. So over the past 3 years, that's what I've been doing. And that's what we hope to show you today here. Now, next one. Would you go to Las Vegas if you knew the odds were 119 to 1 in your favor, right? So there's 119 crash retrieval cases. Let's go to a roulette wheel at Vegas, and it has 120 spaces, and you put down 119 bets, you're going to win every time. You almost can't lose. So the bottom line is, all we need is one of these cases to be real. And the whole concept of UFO crash retrievals not being authentic completely falls away. We just need one of these to be real here. I want to give credit to Rudy Gardet, who's my artist who did the sketches in this presentation. And we're going to go ahead and begin right here. This is 1942. UFO crash retrieval at an Army base north of Georgia. Now, even Leonard wasn't told where this was. So this is somewhere north of Georgia. And I'm going to give you the page numbers and the case files so that you can verify this in the book. So this is page 319 within UFO Crash Retrievals by Leonard Stringfield. This craft was about 15 feet in diameter. It was about 10 feet tall. There were markings, hieroglyphic markings written along the outer circumference of the bottom portion of this craft. There were 3 levels. Upper level had a control panel with buttons and switches and dials and levers, and that's what you see on this enlarged view in the upper right-hand side. This is all by Rudy Gardet. Now, on the second level, level 2, there was what looked like 4 bar stools that were positioned in back of a wraparound window. That's what you see, again, in the front portion here. At the bottom, there was what looked like a trap door here. So also want to mention that there were 4 crew members taken alive. They were 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, milky white skin. I'm going to go to the next slide and do an enlargement. So now you can see what these hieroglyphic letters may have looked like. And as we go through some of these cases, you'll see that markings appear on other cases as well. So what that means is that there has to be an international collaboration of scientists, lab coat technicians, who have an entire library of all these markings that they can reference from, that they can pull data from, trying to decipher what these markings mean. There has to be such an organization. It's only, logical that they would have this. Okay, next one. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. This is Tex Martin. This is page 242, 243 in the book. And I want to make mention that Wright-Patterson Air Force Base didn't exist until October 1947. It was known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, back in 1946. And you can kind of see this as Hangar Bay Complex number 4. And this young boy, 6 years old, his father worked at the base at the time. And they were kind of between breaks here. And there was a janitor who just offered to buy this young boy a soda. And so he turned to his father and he says, "Is it okay that this janitor gets me a soda?" And he said, "Yeah, go right ahead." So you've got this 46 era vending machine here, and he's giving this young boy this pop. And so here's the rough sketch that Rudy came up with. Now, while this is going down, there's a connecting cafeteria to one of the main hangars here. And a gentleman came through this door, and this young boy got a peek inside this hangar. And this is what he saw. He saw two 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboys that had tarp debris. He saw a dish-shaped craft that was off-white in color on tripod pogo landing gear. And then near this craft on the floor were three ET bodies measuring about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. We'll get into that later here. And so here was the very first pass original sketch that Rudy came up with. And if you look in the background, you can see our primary eyewitness peering through the doorway here. So let's see if we can clean this up. Let's see if we can refine this drawing. And here's what Rudy came up with here. Now you can see it coming into view here. This craft was about 20 feet in diameter. It had two bands wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. Three small humanoid bodies, about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, all having oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were on stretchers on the floor. Off to the right and left of the craft were these 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks with tarped debris and heavy chains covering the tarps. And he's looking at all this. And this went on for a couple of days. By the end of the week, they were caught, and his father was reprimanded for bringing his son, who saw all this. So it did not end well for his father here. Here's the full color rendering by Joel Christopher Payne. Want to give him credit here. And you can see the 6-year-old boy kind of looking through the doorway while all this is going on. So you can imagine that it'd be very interesting to see what happened to all this. And I want to mention too that we're still not even at Roswell yet. We're only 1946 time frame. And if you go back in time, you go to 1942, this would be Battle Los Angeles. Two craft were recovered then. We go a little bit further back, we've got 1941, April 20th, 1941, Cape Girardeau. There were three bodies recovered there. And then if we take it even further back to 1933 in Italy, there was another crash retrieval. So already we're 5, 6 in, and we're not even at Roswell yet. So this is going way back prior to Roswell here. Okay, next one, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. This was a private who worked in records management, and the source for this one is Space, the Final Frontier, page 59 by Clark McCollum. That's the source for this one. Here's the cover of the book. And within the book, there's a sketch here, and this is what the sketch looked like from the primary eyewitness. Now, this thing was 15 feet in diameter. It was 7 feet tall. No rivets, no seams, no weld marks, no visible means of propulsion. There were no socket head cap screws. There were no hex head cap screws. There was a flat section wrapped around the outer circumference that had these rectangular windows. Now, this thing arrived at the base from Arkansas on a railroad flat car. That's how it got here. So again, this is from the original witness. And so here is my cleaned up AutoCAD drawing. And if you look in the upper right, I peeled back the skin that allows you to look inside the craft itself. Now, there was a central column that was about 3 feet in diameter that started at the very bottom of the craft at the center, rose vertically, and connected to the top of the craft. And I want to mention too that this entire interior, you could look through these windows. It was antiseptically sterile inside. So there were no bodies, there were no debris, there were no control panels, there were no buttons and switches. It was antiseptically sterile. Now, if you look at this red dot on the front window here, this is the attempted point of entry where these lab coat technicians were trying to gain entry to the craft. So they were using a diamond tip drill bit. This comes up at least 2 other times in these cases here. So we've got white lab coat technicians that are desperately trying to breach the hull of these craft to reverse engineer the propulsion and weapon systems and any other thing that can gain to this. So here was my first pass illustration just to give you an idea of what this thing may have looked like. And then this is Joseph Ray's full color illustration, now really maintaining an important part of our national history by the use of these illustrations here. Here's Rudy's drawing. So you can see when this private records management came into the hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, back then Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, he was met with an MP who was a friend, and this MP said, you know what? I've got something I want to show you. So he brings him in the hangar. He shows him this craft, and this guy is shocked. He cannot believe what he's seeing. He saw that there was a tarp that was folded off to the right of the craft, and in the foreground, what you see is a toolbox and then this electric drill with a diamond tip drill bit. That's the scene here. So let's go to Joseph's full color rendering, and now you can kind of see what this entire scene may have looked like if we were actually there in real time and could have been there back in 1946. Okay, next one. Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona. This is January 1947, north of Superstition Mountains. Page 93, case A10. And I'm going to go to the sketch here. So you've got two military personnel going down an unimproved road, not too far from the Superstition Mountains, and they are challenged by MPs with rifles. And obviously, they were not supposed to be there. They were at the wrong place at the wrong time, but it was too late because about another 150 feet off to the left, they saw a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft came in about a 30-degree angle. It was 18 feet tall, had a dome on top. There were two bands wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself, and then what looked like indented windows between those bands. And they're seeing all this. It was already too late. They already saw this. They were immediately told to vacate the area, but not before they saw the beginning stages of this retrieval operation. And I'm going to go to the next slide here. Now you can see this is Joel Christopher Payne's illustration of what this thing may have looked like. And, you know, we really still haven't even got to Roswell yet, and we're 5 or 6 retrieval operations in already. Next one, White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Primary source was a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force, page 196 in the book. Now, this operation took place at night. This is about a 150-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. This entire operation was excruciatingly well lit. They had light-alls, they had industrial lighting, they had spotlights, they had searchlights shining on this craft. Came down at about a 30-degree angle. Also, I want to mention that they had people with Geiger counters walking around this craft. They had still photography. They had motion picture film reel going on of this. So they absolutely have film of this operation. Let's go to the next slide here. Now you can get an idea of what this may have looked like. And there was a team definitely documenting this entire operation by both still photography, motion picture film reel here. So what's the actionable item? Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. So when we hear about these recent congressional hearings on UAP, they never talk about these operations, but yet somewhere in a vault at Andrews Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, could be Edwards Air Force Base, there is a library where they have all these motion picture film reels. So that could be brought into congressional hearings. That's what actually needs to happen here. All right, next one. Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California. This is July, August 1947. Seen by two 19-year-old workers at a nearby field. So they were at the right place at the right time. This came down the night prior. Now, when the two 19-year-old workers got to work the morning of, the foreman came to them and told them that this craft actually came down. This is the original sketch that came with the craft. This was about 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall. It was not a large craft. There were two indented window sections wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. It had a flat top. There was no low-rise dome. And actually, we have a map that shows you where this thing came down. So X marks the spot. We could go here and get probably within quarter mile, plus or minus of a quarter mile of where this craft came down. But it's been so long now, I don't think we're going to have any trace effects here, but here's the original AutoCAD drawing I came up with based on the original sketch. So again, this thing was 9 feet diameter, 4 feet tall, with a flat top. And this was the first pass illustration that gives you an idea of what this thing may actually have looked like if we were there. And I'm going to go to Rudy's drawing. So before the military got there, these two young 19-year-old workers came up to this thing. One of them kicked this thing with his boot. So he made contact with it, and they're looking at this thing. They're shocked. Within about 5 minutes, there was a convoy of military army vehicles that arrived at the scene. They were all told to get out of here immediately. So they were about an eighth of a mile away, but they saw this whole operation. They saw army personnel basically lift this craft onto the back trailer of this troop transport and move this out of here in haste, like very quickly. So I want to go to the full color illustration by Joel Christopher Payne. Now you can kind of get an idea of what this retrieval operation looked like based on not only the eyewitness testimony, but the original sketch that we have with the case itself. All right, next one. This is 1947. UFO crash retrieval seen at a warehouse at Berkeley University, of all places, right? We wouldn't think that we'd hear about something here, but that's what this primary eyewitness is telling us here. It's
Hey,
yeah,
Michael.
go ahead.
Yeah, let's just take about. We are at the bottom of the hour here,
Okay.
and for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Michael Schratt, and he's a digger. He finds things that hardly anybody else get their hands on, and he's showing us some of this in regard to UFO or UAP crash retrievals, and this is getting interesting. And also, I will ask you if you like what you hear and see, please subscribe. And also, the super chat is wide open if you want to support us there also. We would sure appreciate it. So thank you. And Michael, you're back on. I don't feel like I need to say anything. This is so good by itself that you just go ahead and run with it.
Okay, we'll continue. Now, I want to mention that we do have the name of the source on this case, Albert Bruce Collins, deceased. He was a metallurgical engineer. Now, he was at the right place at the right time where this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy truck backed in to a warehouse at Berkeley University. I'm going to go to Rudy's drawing here, and what he saw was this 30-foot long egg-shaped craft, 15 feet tall. There was a hull breach. It looked like a cracked egg. Inside the cracked egg, there was an interior yoke that was about 3 feet in diameter. Now, in the forward portion of this craft itself, there was a composite panel. Wrapped around the outer circumference of this interior yoke was another composite panel. And then he said that on the lower right part of the craft itself, there was what looked like a hull breach where there was shrapnel coming out. So it sounds like there was an interior implosion in this craft. Now, my question is this the entire craft itself, or is this the propulsion system of something larger that it fits inside? Because if that's the case, the actual craft itself would be much larger. So I think that's a very interesting question we need to look at here. Here's Joel's full color resolution uh, image of what this thing may have looked like. And you can see our primary source here. And this was at Berkeley back in 1947. Be interesting to see if we could get a piece of debris from this retrieval operation within the public domain. That would help move this whole field forward here. All right, next one. C-119 flying boxcar, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, prior to 1951. I believe this is 1948 timeframe. Primary source was an engineer. He worked in highway construction. Page 32 within the book, there were at least 2 bodies recovered, and the craft was about 9 feet in diameter. Now, how do we know this, right? How can we know the diameter of the craft itself? Well, if you look at the measurements on the inside cargo bay interior walls of a C-119, it's 9 feet 10 inches. So if you have a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, that allows 5 inches of clearance on either side. So that's why we know that whatever this craft was that they recovered, it could not have been any more than 9 feet in diameter. That's how we've got a mathematical certainty on that. So here you see the retrieval operation. This engineer was asked by the US military to aid in the retrieval operation. And so you've got the clamshell bay doors opened up, and they're moving this craft by this ramp section with a cable inside the craft itself, inside the cargo bay of the C-119. And I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is Joseph Race's full color illustration that shows you what this retrieval operation may actually have looked like. And if you look in the foreground, you can see these small ET bodies. They were very small. The primary source said that their skin was burned. So when they entered our atmosphere, maybe they had a pressure differential, something happened. There was high heat employed and their skin was burned, because he said that when he touched their skin, their burnt skin came off on his finger. So it was not, for the, it was more of a gruesome type situation associated with the bodies here. But I just want to, reference that bodies were retrieved in this operation. And now you can see them bringing the craft up into the interior of the C-119 flying boxcar. All right, next one. Pentagon, 1952, off limits room. UFO Crash Retrievals, page 152, case 1. So this was an office worker who somehow entered an off limits room, probably at the basement at the Pentagon. We know now that there is a vast underground basement at the Pentagon where they most likely keep a lot of this information. The 8x10 glossy white, black and white photographs, the color photographs, the motion picture film reels. It is believed that this is a repository for a lot of this information. So she's going down into the basement. She goes through these double doors and she's kind of entering this dark, dusty room. It's dingy. There's some cardboard boxes. It's very dark. And she kind of like turns to the side and she is shocked at what she sees. And I'm going to go to Rudy's drawing to show you what she saw here. She saw a pickled alien in a glass jar. Just right off the bat, she sees this and she's shocked. She can't believe what she's seeing. This is 1952 at the Pentagon. Within 5 seconds, literally 5 seconds, she feels this MP's hand on her arm, shoulder area, telling her to get out of here immediately. And she was, basically sternly warned not to talk about this. Leonard eventually contacted her years later. She wouldn't talk about it. Again, 1952 at the Pentagon. Next one, Camp Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. Herman Johnson is the primary source, and this is case A1, page 80 in the book. And we'll go to the next drawing here by Rudy, and I want to just kind of highlight now, when this craft came down, this 30-foot long, kind of the size of a small house, egg-shaped craft, the soil that it came down on was still warm when the retrieval team got to the area. So that's point number 1. Now, point number 2, this thing was 30 feet across, looked like an egg. There was a fin that wrapped around the outer portion of the craft itself. It was still rotating when they got there. There was one humanoid body taken alive. There were 3 others that were assisted by medical personnel, and that's what you see kind of in the foreground here in the center. So they were assisted, and these beings were about 3.5 feet tall, slight build. They walked as though they had no knee joint. So it was this staggered step type operation. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had helmets on, and they had what looked like mittens on too. And so that's kind of what this scene looks like. Let's go to Joseph Race, full color illustration here. Now you can kind of see this whole scene coming into view. You've got this red soil still warm, still hot. You've got the ambulance truck there. You've got multiple Jeeps at the scene. We're going to zoom in here, and now you can see these beings with the helmets. They've got mittens. They've got one-piece tight-fitting flight suits. That comes up multiple times. We always hear about these fully integrated one-piece tight-fitting flight suits. That keeps popping up again and again here. Now you can see that one being brought over to the ambulance truck, and in the report it said that his comrades were trying to establish two-way communication with their fallen friend here. That's mentioned in the book as well. One
Wow.
final illustration on this one here shows you what this whole scene looked like here. Can you imagine being here and being involved in this retrieval operation? When you read the first-hand military sources description of this operation, he really puts you there. You really get the feeling that you're at the scene with him here. Okay, next one. And this is one of my favorites here. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1953. Michael Olvey, he's the source. He was Army Reserve's warrant officer. UFO Crash Retrievals, page 15, abstract number 8. Again, this is 1953. So it's at night. Hangar complex number 4, I believe, is where this went down. And if you look where I've got the arrow here, that's Bay E. I've actually been inside that hangar bay. This is what it looks like on the exterior. So you've got a 4-engine DC-7 transport, cargo transport, comes in at night at the base. And this is what this scene looked like here. Imagine this taking place inside the hangar. So this DC-7 taxis up on the tarmac, enters the hangar. Hangar bay doors close, and on the port aft cargo bay door section opens up, and there's a forklift starts offloading these wooden crates. So I want to take you inside the hangar now. So let's take this scene and move it inside the hangar. And this is what this warrant officer saw. He saw that when this forklift dropped the forks down to the hangar floor, there were 5 wooden crates. The 3 wooden crates on top had their lids removed, exposing 3 ET bodies, about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. And he said one of these beings was female because it had breasts, he said. And then he also said that these beings were being suspended off the bottom of the crates by a white netting that protected them from the dry ice freezer burn below, which is something that I thought was interesting. So, and you can imagine, he was about 5, 6, 7 feet away from this thing, and he's looking inside these wooden crates. So I'm going to take you to the next illustration here. This is Joseph Roy's illustration that shows you this entire scene. Now, he had also heard about the debris that was recovered in this operation. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to give you a 90-degree look down view on the bodies now. And that's what this looks like here. And one of these was female, according to the primary source within this case. And we actually have his name here. All right, we're going to go to the next case. This is Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12th, 1954, page 82 in the book. And I want to mention that Walker Air Force Base used to be Roswell Army Airfield. So we're talking about the same place of the 509th Bomb Group here. Next slide. So primary source was a photographer. He knew about cameras. He knew about lighting. He knew about exposure. And so he thought, you know, my skills might be helpful to the military. And so he joined the military. And on this particular day, he and his teammates were told to board a Sikorsky H-19 helicopter that you see right here, like the same model, virtually the same type model here. And the pilot in command over the intercom system said, gentlemen, this is not a drill. This is a real world operation. So they take off They head northbound. The freeway is to their right. They make a left-hand turn. By this time, it's starting to get dark. And what do they see when they come over this hill? They see a 50-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. This is at night. Came in at about a 45-degree angle. And he's in the helicopter with the cargo bay door open. And he's taking photographs while they have a spotlight shining down on this. Now, there were 4 ET bodies dead and outside the craft laying around the vicinity of where this craft came down. He later learned that within the entryway hatch, they found another 2. So there were 6 bodies recovered. Now, I want to mention one thing very interesting. When they landed the helicopter and the primary source got out, his very first reaction is that he said that the entire vicinity of where this craft came down smelled like automobile battery acid. That's the first thing he noticed. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide here. And now you can see the full color rendering here. There was a series of multicolored lights that were wrapped around the outer circumference that were still rotating when they got there. Now, by this time, military convoy had already arrived. The retrieval operation is in full swing. And he also saw one of the people throw up right next to him. This is one of the crew members of the retrieval operation, got sick immediately because of this acrid battery acid smell that permeated the entire area. That's something that we hear about in other cases as well. All right, next one. And these are all in chronological order by date here. The other Roswell, UFO crash on the Texas-Mexican border. This is spring 1955, and I want to give credit to Noe Torres and my good friend Ruben, who did the legwork on this. They did a great job here. And so this is south of Del Rio, Texas. And I want to kind of set the scene here. So you've got 4 F-86s that are basically escorting 3 B-47s heading westbound, and this is kind of near southern Texas area. And if you look at the map here, you see Del Rio. And as they're flying, there's a dish-shaped craft that goes screaming right by their flight path. So one of the F-86 Sabre jets has to break away formation, which he does, and he follows this craft that is sparking, crosses the Rio Grande, and then crashes on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande River. And I'm going to go back one here. Now you can see him doing a low pass over the crash scene. He saw this whole thing. So he makes a left-hand turn. He flies to Carswell Air Force Base. He gets out of the F-86. He drives to Corsica, which is a general aviation airport. He's joined with a friend. They climb into a 2-seat tail dragger Aranca and go fly back to the crash scene before it's nighttime. So I'm going to go forward here. Here's what it looked like when they landed. So there were 2 people, the primary source and his friend. And what they see is a 25-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had left a debris trail before it settled into a rest area. There was a small low-rise dome that had popped off that was further downrange here. And the Mexican military is already on site. You can see 6x6 troop transport off to the upper left. And he's looking at all this, and he's absolutely shocked at what he sees. There were 4 badly burned bodies associated with this retrieval operation. And I'm going to zoom in here, give you an idea of what these beings look like here. Now, Air Force pilot Robert Willingham was the primary source, and he said that these beings had quote unquote arms that look like broomsticks, according to Robert Willingham. And I'm going to go to the next slide here. Here's the full color resolution rendering by Joel Christopher Payne. And you can see this debris trail that this craft left behind. Now, there's an interesting point here. As it got darker, it started getting colder here. So the Mexican military, and there were a lot of them there surrounding this craft, according to the primary source, what they were doing is they were going off to the 6x6 troop transport off into the upper left here, and they were pulling out blankets. They were putting blankets on the debris, which was still warm at the time. And then once the blankets were warmed up, they were putting these on their bodies to warm them up, which I thought was a very interesting kind of like historical point to this that actually adds credibility to the case. So let's go kind of inside the craft now. These bodies were burnt, they were mangled. It wasn't for the faint of heart, it was a gruesome scene, but that's what Robert Willingham had described according to this retrieval operation. Okay, next one. Want to give credit to Clifford Stone, who dug up this case. This is retired Air Force pilot, late 1950s. This was an interview that was conducted by Ed Camarak Jr. about a 5 to 6 minute film clip associated with this particular Air Force pilot. And what he said is within this film clip that he saw, a 60-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, about 10 feet wide gash on the upper dome of the craft. There were bodies recovered, about 5 feet tall, and inside the craft itself, and this is all in this 6 minute film clip, he said that there were buttons and switches and dials and levers within this 6 minute film clip here. I want to give credit. Here's kind of an enlargement of what the propulsion system may have looked like and this display screen on the inside part of the dome itself here. And we'll go on to the next one here. This is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah, and Michael also,
Yep, go
Michael,
ahead.
I need to tell you, we have 7.5 minutes left of the show, so I
Okay,
want to leave you a little time towards the end where, talk about your book and
no
how they can
problem.
get a hold of you too.
No
So kind
problem.
of
Yep, we
pa-
can we
pace
can
pace yourself there.
we can wrap ourselves up here on this one. So this is April 1962. We had a transient group of pilots that are part of the 350th Tactical Air Command fighter wing, and they're running down this row of hangars at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They were looking for this mobile racquetball court, and as they went to this one hangar complex, the door was open. They run inside, and they see this interesting 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft propped up by engine test stands. They were challenged, stating that they're not supposed to be there, but they did see this thing. And I trust the credibility of first-hand military fighter pilots. They had no reason to lie. I
Yeah,
want to go to what this pilot said here. Now, this is one of the pilots here. The guard challenged by saying, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, sir." I replied to the affirmative, and we turned about face and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old US had developed or had all along flying saucers in service. So when you hear this kind of information coming from credible firsthand military fighter pilots, I think it's something that we should actually take to heart. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, we have maybe one last comment on some of these,
Yeah,
and
well,
then
certainly want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join all of you. I hope I presented this the different cases where I provided the information where people can verify this, they can read about this within Leonard's book here. Again, as you mentioned, I have a book called Dark Files, a pictorial history of lost, forgotten, and obscure UFO encounters. It kind of follows the same format as this presentation. It's all illustrated, it's all referenced, so you can check the references to verify this. Kind of follows the same format here, but I'm going to continue tracking down these military witnesses. And I think it's important that we make these cases come alive, preserve an important part of our national history, and we need to track down these remaining legacy crash retrieval witnesses before they all pass away. Because once they pass away, we'll never be able to get their comments within a
yeah,
congressional hearing setting here. That's why it's important that we track these people down now.
yeah. Well,
Wow.
That's you're getting the facts on these, but what about your opinion? Do you
Mhm.
think that most of what we see in the sky is from Earth-made crafts, or are they
There is
foreign?
a significant majority of man-made craft that follow the form, fit, and function of quote unquote ET spacecraft. And at this point, it's seamless because people would not really be able to tell the difference unless you get up close to these things. Obviously, if you have seams and rivets and fasteners and you have flashing lights and you have low
Yeah,
frequency electrical humming noises, if you have those telltale signs, you'll be able to tell the difference. But now that we're so long down the road here, we've been doing this for 80 years, and we've got billions of classified black budget funding going into these programs and being ciphered from other projects to pay for other black programs. This has been going on for 80 years. It's at a
yeah,
point now where it's going to be very difficult to tell the difference. And if they ever tried to pull something, they'd be able to fool a lot of people. So that's why it's urgent that we consider some of
yeah,
these cases here.
yeah. Well, it's a little easier now with the new whistleblower laws that it came on the books.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh gosh, what do you think, Nora? This must have been the easiest show we've ever done because
Fascinating. Just just so excellent. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. Great to be both with both of you. Thank you very much.
yeah, this has been wonderful, and I highly recommend. I went to Amazon and I found the book there, and the book that you're talking about, the other one where they talk about all these retrievals, you
Yes.
have the pictures and the drawings in addition to that. So maybe your book will be a little more complete.
Well, yeah, there are no drawings or illustrations in Leonard's book, and that's why I thought it was important to make these cases come alive. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is good. Oh, wow. Well, we're down to the end here, and I have a favorite question that I like to ask at the
Sure.
end of shows sometime. First of all, if they want to connect with you, let's say that there's a guy that has been working at S4 and he
Oh
is
yeah.
itching to come forward with
Right.
something. How do they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me through Facebook. You can get a hold of me through email. So you can get a hold of me through my YouTube channel, which is Michael Schratt. Those three ways.
Okay, good deal. Well, here's my question. If you could talk to the whole world and the world is listening,
Yes.
what would you tell them?
I would tell them that we have a bright future in store if we choose to take the responsibility and grab the opportunity now before it's too late. And the way we can do that is to reach out to these remaining credible firsthand military sources and encourage them to come forward as a united coalition, not as an independent onesie or twosie, but come together as a united coalition. And when we have that body of evidence, the government is going to be hard pressed to squelch those witnesses because coming together as one voice is going to be a lot more powerful than a lone wolf. And that would be my request.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're
Perfect.
right. And
Hmm,
uh,
great.
any well, Nori, we're down to the end here, so we better
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. We have to have Michael come back. There's just too much
Yeah,
information.
Sure,
So
sure.
we'd love to have you back, Michael.
Thank you. That'd be great. No
yes,
problem.
that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Okay, until next week, be good to each other.